Hello guys, and welcome back to another Fiendsmith deck. On today's episode, we are looking at Fiendsmith Voiceless Voice, and the reason for this is because they do happen to synergize fairly well, as does most things with Fiendsmith, but let me give you the quick rundown as to why these decks work together. Starting off with the Fiendsmith side, if you do the Fiendsmith combo, you can end on Beatrice, which then allows you to use Beatrice and the Diviner of Herald, go into Sprite Elf, and then utilize the Diviner of Herald to get into the full Voiceless Voice combo with Elf as well, which is very useful. We also then have the Voiceless stuff, which can sometimes end on additional bodies you just kind of wanted to like send to the graveyard, which you can use in order to go into the Moon, which can then translate into the Fiendsmith combo with like Desiree and the like. Also on top of that, Desiree is extremely good in control style decks because mostly what it does is just Omni Negate multiple times, which is extremely powerful, and if it's sent to the graveyard, it is removal, which is again extremely powerful. So there's a bunch of stuff like that that makes the Fiendsmith stuff work so very well in this deck. So that's pretty much it. We're going to just quickly go through the card by card and the explanation. Starting off with the Fiendsmith stuff, we're running 5 Fiendsmith cards because I wanted to play exactly 40, and I didn't want to change any of the other ratios because the ratios that I had were already pretty good. So what I did is I took out all of the Kashtira stuff that I was previously playing, which is not bad, and I just threw in the Fiendsmith stuff. So we're exactly playing 5 cards, which is the Fabled Blurry, the 2 Engraver, and the 2 Tract, and that's pretty much it. So normally I would play 3, but yeah, we're only playing the 2. Honestly, you could potentially cut another card for the 3rd Tract. Honestly, having the 3rd Tract is really nice because the Fiendsmith stuff is very good for this deck, mostly due to like eating an Ash Blossom or something of that nature. So it's not terrible there. That being said, that's pretty much it. We're also running the Voiceless engine, which is 3 Voiceless Voice, or 3 low of the Voiceless Voice, which allows you to set or activate one of these from the deck, which is very nice. We also have the 3 Diviner, which is able to use Trias Hierarchica to tribute itself in order to then summon out the low from the deck. Very cool. We also have the 3 Saphira, which searches out a card as well as sending itself and prayers to the graveyard, which it can then use itself as a ritual spell-like effect in order to ritual summon the card you basically just searched, which is pretty cool. We're also playing the 2 Guardian, or Skull Guardian Protector of the Voiceless Voice, which is the Omni Negate, on top of the fact that it also on ritual searches a card, which is again very useful. However, it's only the Omni Negate with low. We're also playing a bunch of one-ofs, that being the 1 Saravis, which can special summon itself by shuffling back one of the prayers, as well as another spell, which is not terrible. And once it's special summoned, if your opponent activates a thing, you can just cheat out from the deck a light ritual monster, which is pretty nice, which means that if your opponent were to, you know, activate a card during their turn and this card's on the field, you then potentially go into the other one, Saravis, the other Saravis, which is the Dragon Ritual Monster, which can Omni Negate, or not Omni Negate, which can negate a summon and banish the monster by returning itself to hand. Also, it returns itself to the hand for cost, which means your opponent's not going to be able to like imperm or like pretty much anything targeting wise to deal with this. Like they can't even Desiree to negate unless they Desiree in response, or like, in preparation for the effect, like that would work, but beside the point. It also gives us target protection, so being able to search this to then like normal summon a guy, and then if your opponent were to like imperm or Veiler or something like that, you can protect, which is pretty good. And then we're also running the 1 Odd Eyes Pendulum Graph, which gets even better now because of the fact that it is just a ritual monster that you can very easily summon in order to get just a free spell negate. That's pretty much it. Also, notably, this does negate effects, which does matter for quite a few different things. However, it's not exceptional because a lot of like continuous cards means that they're going to stick on the field. But for things like the Hallowed Azamina, for things like, I'm sorry, not the Hallowed Azamina, for things like, for like Branded Fusion, for like, other stuff that like require you to, you know, you can only activate it once per turn, etc. Lightning Storm is the other example that I was thinking of. Stuff like that, where it's basically like, cool, you don't get to do the thing again, which is very nice. And yeah, that's pretty much it in terms of the engine. We're also running, of course, the 2 prayers, the 3 barrier, which is the search card, the 1 blessing, which recurs resources, and then the radiance, which is able to shuffle back cards in order to special summon a guy, as well as pop cards based on the number of differently named or just light ritual monsters you control. So that's pretty much it for the main deck. We're also running the 2 Maxi, the 3 Ash, the 3 Fuelos, the 2 Nibiru, and the 2 Called By. That's it for the non-engine. As for the extra deck, we're running 1 Entis, 1 Herald as well for our Diviner targets. You don't have to play the Entis, nor do you have to play something like Lina or Access Code, but you probably should. And then the rest of the cards are pretty simple. The Fiendsmith package, the Lacrima, Desiree, Moon, Sequence, and Requiem. The 1 Beatrice as well for that. We're running the 1 Anima because we need something to link off our level 1 monsters into. This could be Link Karibo. I just like Anima a little bit more. We're also playing the 1 Lina. Lina is very good. We have tons of light monsters. Our opponents likely have light monsters due to the Fiendsmith cards. Pretty useful. We're also playing the 1 Elf, as I mentioned previously, with the Beatrice combo. It's very nice. We also have 2 Dynamondo. You could cut this to 1 if you really wanted to, but I think 2 is pretty useful. It's just able to shuffle cards back into the deck for you, as well as remove cards from the opponent's field. And then on top of that, it has the combo where during the opponent's turn, you tribute it in order to target a ritual monster in the grave and special summon it. So what you can do is you can link off things like Skull Guardian and Low, put them both into the graveyard, then during the opponent's turn, reborn the Skull Guardian and reborn Low off of that in order to then trigger Low's effect to set or to activate another one of these cards, which is very useful. Then we all, of course, have the SP Little Knight and the Access Code Talker. That's pretty much it. Let's hop into the replays and show you how this deck performs. Alright, so here we are going first, and let's see what we can do. We actually do have a pretty strong hand here. So we're going to start off here with the pre-preparation of Right in order to grab up the Seravis. Since we already have access to Diviner, we're going to go for the Diviner into the Trios, and yeah, seems pretty good thus far, and my opponent hasn't done anything. We're going to go for the Low in order to grab a Barrier into the Saphira. Saphira is going to pitch in order to go for the Skull Guardian, which then allows us to go for the Saphira in Graves effect, tributing the Trias Hierarchica in order to ritual summon out the Skull Guardian. So out comes Skull Guardian. We're going to activate its effect in order to grab up the Pendulum, the Odd Eyes Pendulum. Here we can then summon our Seravis, and we can use the spell here in order to go into Odd Eyes Pendulum Graph. We're going to try and activate our Low here, to the which we will be met by the Bestial Saronir. Now, that's not the end of the world, mostly because we already drew the trap. I did get a little greedy here, but I think it is overall still worthwhile, just due to the fact that we already have Radiance. So during the main phase, if my opponent does anything, we can just shuffle back Prayers, shuffle back Seravis, shuffle back something of that nature, right? And then just summon the Low, and it's not that big of a deal. So, there you go. Out comes this guy, and we're just going to set one and pass the turn. We're just immediately going to fire the Maxi here. My opponent goes to the main phase here, and I'm like, okay, cool. Out comes Book of the Eclipse. I'm going to negate. Out comes the second one. Yeah, cool. We're going to put the guy into the back row, and of course. Now, obviously, this is a branded player. Why would it not be? So, tragic. Luckily, the Maxi resolved, so at least there's that. They're going to actually not do all that much here, but it's kind of interesting. They do grab up the Branded Fusion off of the Retribution, so there's that. They're also going to grab Lost here. Not really anything I can do about that. They're going to then search with, because of course they didn't mill the Magnamut, so they're going to search the Magnamut, so there's that. And out comes Lost. They're then going to activate the Branded Fusion and go for Albion here. And now I could have potentially, prior to this, used Radiance in order to do a few things. But honestly, at this point, it's just like, okay, let's see what my opponent does. And I'm going to try and use Radiance as late as possible. They are under Maxi, so of course the Albion does make sense here. They're going to walk over one of my monsters and then flip this guy up so that I don't get any draws off of the Book of Eclipse. But luckily, that card is now in the grave. The other ritual monster is in the grave. So what we can do is we can actually just special summon him back. Or shuffle it back to special summon Low, which Low can then grab the third of the continuous cards with the Blessing here. So at this point, this is a very good position for us. And we can add it back, of course, our Odd Eyes Pendulum Graph from the Pendulum Zone, adding the Ritual spell as well, which is very good. We're going to draw Lurie for turn, which is kind of interesting. Now, I want to use Lurie kind of as late as possible, but we do have our Omni Negate online, so I'm feeling pretty good. We also have Called By, which we drew for turn, or which we drew off of the one draw that they gave us with the Maxi, which is pretty interesting. So at the very least, we do have the called by to negate anything that the Albion would do. But immediately we're going to ritual summon out the Odd Eyes Pendulum Graph, and I kind of played this weird. I forgot to mention. So I summoned the SnowiKs here, which may have seemed kind of strange, but it was actually more so to put the cards back into the grave, or back into the deck, because Saphira has to send a ritual spell from deck to grave in order to then do its thing. And put itself into the grave. So that is one of the reasons why we shuffled back, because we already had one in grave and we searched the other one from deck. So we shuffled back both of those, which triggers Blessing, which special summons the Odd Eyes by tributing the SnowiKs. Maybe I shouldn't have done that. Hard to say. Anyway, outcomes low. We're going to then just activate the effect of the Saphira. We're going to then tribute the low and special summon out the Skull Guardian as well. And we know that they have Magma in hand, but we're going to go 1 and 2. They're going to activate the Magma. I'm going to allow this to resolve, which may seem extremely strange, but again, we still haven't normaled, and I want to get the Fabled Blurry onto the field. This would have clogged my zones, and I'm just like, yeah, let's just do this. It's just better. So, yeah, there you go. It also allows me to keep my Omni, which I'm almost certain that they're trying to bait out, which is why I'm just holding it. They're trying to, like, keep their, you know, make me negate something so that their Albion resolves, but there you go. We're going to go for the Requiem here. We're going to activate its effect in order to go for nothing, because my opponent decides to go for Albion here, but luckily, Albion reads fairly, and it does say summon both monsters, so we can just call by the other one, and yeah, out comes this guy. Engraver is going to then be equipped with the Requiem. They're going to add back the Aldaz, and we're just going to send the Magnemut to the graveyard, then link 2 into sequence. I could have done this a little bit better, because I think I had a way too lethal with Access Code Talker in particular, and a few other lines that I could have gone for. So I do kind of goof this here, but we are going to shuffle back 2 in order to go for Lacrima. Lacrima's effect is going to activate to grab up the Engraver, and then Engraver is going to pitch itself in order to grab Tract. Because I didn't have another way of fusion summoning, this is kind of the best way to do this. So we can actually just activate the Tract here. I'm going to grab Engraver and then pitch Saphira, so that at the very least I can use the Engraver in hand and keep the other one Engrave's effect still active. Out comes Desiree. We're going to shuffle back another guy in order to burn for 12, and then we are going to equip and then special summon. And potentially here I could have done a little bit more, I think. Like, I think I could have gone Elf, bring back a guy, and then maybe had lethal with, like, you know, getting rid of specifically the Skull Guardian Omni, which I don't think is a good idea, but I think I could have technically had lethal here. Luckily we didn't, because the Golden Sword Soul was just in my opponent's hand, which is hilarious. So we're going to Omni negate that, we're going to walk over the field, and they are going to send a card here. But at this point, I still feel like you know, the game is pretty much closed here. I'm going to negate. This may seem strange, but stick with me. I don't want them getting Branded in High Spirit. It just, like, does too much. So we're going to negate that, and if they do a thing, we get a special summon a guy. And we already have the Omni negates here. My opponent's going to special summon here. That's fine. Skull Guardian can go away. That's not really that big of a deal. And, yeah. They're going to then immediately go for this guy, the Bestial Lubellion, which allows me to then tribute summon the Odd Eyes Pendulum Graph. I do end up tributing the SnowiKs, but that's fine. It's not that big of a deal. He's not... Branded doesn't target me, so it's not really that big of a deal. Also, I was never really going to summon him, because are they ever going to do anything that's not a fusion? No, which this guy can't negate fusions, so not really that big of a deal. Anyway, my opponent then gets to set the Branded in white, so I'm going to attempt to negate. They're going to then respond with the Blazing Cartesia, which is going to fuse into Titaniclad. Wait till he reads this card. You know what? I will leave this on field, and I want you to tell me why Titaniclad doesn't work here, because maybe you'll be smarter than this Branded player. Probably not. Sorry. You probably already are. Anyway, the Branded in white is going to be negated. I'm also going to negate the Blazing Cartesia. This guy's unaffected, so there's no point in doing that. They're going to go with the Branded Fusion. I'm going to negate that. And since, of course, this guy negates effects, they don't get the Branded Fusion again. This guy would have negated activations, so they could have potentially added back the Branded Fusion via some other effect in order to then use it again. But alas, there we go. My opponent just concedes there, realizing that after going to the battle phase, they can't actually attack anything. So, oops. Good game. Alright, here we are going second, and is that Fool a loss? Yeah, this is one of the things that makes this deck actually pretty useful, is that it doesn't die to Full Loss. So my opponent's going to do something. So they're going to summon Silva here. Cool, understandable. And then they're just going to pass the turn. Interesting. Okay. So we have a 6-card hand here. We're going to go for the Tract here. We're going to activate the effect of the Tract. They're going to negate with the Silva, and then they're going to be met by Diviner, which will be promptly met with Full Loss, to the which I will go anyway. Anyway, we're going to activate the Saphira here. Saphira is going to send. We're going to grab up the Odd Eyes Pendulum Graph. We're going to activate the effect of the Saphira. We're going to tribute the low, and my opponent just concedes there, realizing the writing on the wall, and yep. We don't die to Fua. That's like the important thing I wanted to show you there. Alright, and here we are once again going first. Let's see what we can do here. This is actually a very good hand. We have 2 outs to that guy in particular. I'm going to Ash here. Now, I maybe shouldn't have normal summon the Lurry, but stick with me here. We're going to go for the Requiem here. We're going to activate the effect of the Requiem. Nothing. Cool. We're going to go for the Engraver, and then we're going to search out the Saravis, and then we're going to go for Saphira. Saphira is going to grab up the Skull Guardian, and at this point, I shuffle back the Called By, and we go for the Sequence. It's a bit greedy, but let's just ball. Let's just see what we can do. We're going to go for the Lacrima. Lacrima is going to special summon back this guy. We're going to go for the Beatrice. We're going to activate the effect of the Beatrice. And we're going to then dump Diviner. Here we can use these 2 to go into the Elf, because, hey, that's a link to, and then any other monster. So there you go. Out comes Elf. Elf is then going to use Diviner in order to send Trias Hierarchica. Trias Hierarchica in order to tribute to special summon out the Skull Guardian with the effect of Saphira. Sorry, we didn't use the Trias Hierarchica. Sorry. Let me re-explain this. I use Saphira there to tribute Diviner instead of the Trias Hierarchica. Make sense? Makes sense. Coolio. Out comes Saravis. We are then going to special summon out the low. Low is going to grab Radiance. Radiance is going to shuffle back the Saravis, grab another low, and then go into Dynamondo. And then we're going to pass the turn. Now, this time, at the very least, if my opponent does have Called By, we still have low on field, which is cool. And that's pretty much it. But notably, this does interact fairly well with Elf, because if my opponent does a thing, we could potentially bring back the Dynamondo and shuffle some additional cards, which is pretty cool. We could also put Diviner back onto the field, so very useful, all things considered. Anyway, out comes the Skull Guardian. We're then going to use low in order to put Blessing onto the field and get promptly Lava Golemed. Well, there's Arabesque. They're going to go for the Huli, because of course we're playing bad cards, and I'm just going to special summon the Trias Hierarchica here. And this may seem strange, but Trias Hierarchica doesn't just tribute to special summon itself, it also has the ability to, if you tribute additional cards, do additional things. For example, if you tribute 2 plus fairy monsters, you can destroy a card your opponent controls. Now, notably, this doesn't target. So what I do get to do is just pop their spell there. So that's pretty nice. But of course, they drew the Ohime. Why would they not? So out comes the Great Ceremony to grab up Ohime. Ohime is going to attach. Then they're going to send an additional card, which happens to be the Dance here. And I also put this in attack position pretty obviously to take less damage, right? So there you go. Anyway, before they attempt to go to the end phase, I'm going to grab up Saphira here by shuffling back the ritual that we had. I just draw the ritual, which is funny, to say the least. I'm going to grab Prayers here. This may seem strange, but the reason I grab Prayers is because it allows me to get an additional ritual summon, so I could potentially ritual summon multiple times. So that, yeah, outside of, like, Saphira. We're also going to grab back the Saravis. Out comes the Saphira. Saphira is going to grab the other Saravis, and I'm going to go for Prayers. They're going to then use the Ohime to negate the Prayers for reasons. I don't know. It did stuff. Anyway, we're going to tribute the Trias Hierarchica in order to summon out the Skull Guardian and trigger the low. They're going to then target their own monster with Rivalry to put another Arabesque on it because they realized I have Saravis in hand. So, yeah, maybe don't do that. Maybe don't target my monsters. Anyway, now they can't target me, so there's that. We're going to go for the Odd Eyes Pendulum Graph here for the Ritual Summon with the other Saravis as well. And then out comes Engraver, and then we're going to summon in order to go into Engraver and do the whole Engraver line. So, here we can make the sequence, and Desiree here just cleans up the field, so we're going to go for the Desiree. And then we are going to equip to the Desiree multiple times, and then just negate the field and walk into it. I do actually pop these two, because I fear for my life. That's pretty much it. I am going to negate here as well, just so that they don't get the recursion, but we're just going to walk into the field and, yep, good game. Nice Lava Golem. Be a shame if it did anything. Good game. Alright, and we're back with the deck, and honestly, this deck is still fairly good. Let me talk to you about why it's not as good as it previously was. First of all, the power level of the decks have just gone up in general. Sure, it still plays well into hand traps, especially with how many hand traps are running around. Things like Nibiru, things like the Fua and Maxi and stuff like that. So that's pretty nice. It also plays well into like Imperm and Valor and stuff like that. Like, there's a lot of ways to just kind of play around that, which is cool. The second thing is that it does happen to, the important thing is, though, that it does lose to Bystials. Bystials are really bad for the deck, because a Bystial on things like Saphira, Bystial on low, Bystial on pretty much anything is very big. That being said, more Bystials are now in the format, which means you're just more susceptible to that stuff. The Fiendsmith stuff can kind of eat some of that, which can be helpful, but it could also just entirely end your turn, which is not great. So, all in all, not exceptional there. That being said, I still think that this deck is pretty fairly well positioned in the current metagame. I don't think it's insane. I don't think it's exceptional. I don't think it's the best deck with which to play or to climb or anything like that, but I still think that it has a lot of merit and it is still fairly strong and worth your consideration. So if you were previously not playing this deck and kind of shelved it and were like, maybe it's not worth playing, I would consider still playing it. I still don't think it's bad, and yeah, it's still extremely fun. And that's pretty much all that I have to say. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hope that you guys did indeed enjoy. If you did, I like us very much. So appreciate it, and remember to always stay frosty. Bye-bye. Shout out to the Frost Guard, my members. Thank you guys so much for the support, and I hope you enjoy the content.